So hello and a very warm welcome to this Explain Pain in the Clinic. Just had to check that there. Just make sure we're doing the right one. So we're just talking about next week's. So my name is Joanna Taylor and I am Director of NOI in Europe. And I am joined this morning by my very good friend and Principal NOI teacher, Tim Beams.
Hello from a very, very wet Kent.
Yeah, and hello from a very wet North Yorkshire. I think if you're anywhere in the UK today, then the weather has been absolutely horrendous. We've had a storm and lots of rain. Okay, so just introducing Tim. Tim has been a NOI teacher for well over 15 years. He has taught literally hundreds of Explain Pain courses to thousands of clinicians all over the world. He is an active clinician himself, specializing in complex and persistent pain. He is also founder of an organization called Le Pub Scientifique, which is an online platform for clinicians to learn about the very latest developments in clinical practice and pain research directly from the researchers and pain specialists. So, Tim, would you mind just dropping the link to Le Pub Scientifique into the chat, and maybe also the link to the podcast, because people who come to these sessions are often interested in what you do in the pub. So that would be great. Thank you very much. Tim is also co-author of the Graded Motor Imagery Handbook with David Butler and Lorimer Mosley. So these sessions are all about giving you a taste of Explain Pain and how to practically use it in your clinic. Now, some of you will have already done an Explain Pain course, and for those people, these sessions are designed to reinforce what you've already learned and also expand on it a little bit and refresh. But if you are new to Explain Pain, these sessions will give you a really great taster of what to expect. We just skim over the top of the subjects in these sessions, and in the courses you will go into a lot more depth, but it will give you a pretty good insight into what it's all about. So just a couple of things to mention. Tim will be talking for about 20 minutes. If you have any questions, put them in the Q&A or the chat. We'll be monitoring those throughout. And if you want to access the recording of this session, you can access it in two places. So either in the clinical discussion group, which is a Facebook group, and I'll drop the link to that in the chat in just a minute. That's a really great group. There are about 2,500 clinicians in there, all interested in the NOI approach, and there's the opportunity to ask questions, and we put all the adverts for these sessions in that group as well, so you can click straight through and register. And then also we upload these to our new YouTube channel, which I think there's about 10 of these sessions on there now, so you can check out the titles that we've already recorded and go and have a pick and mix and see the ones that interest you. So I'll drop the link to that as well into the chat. So without further ado, let's crack on, Tim. Today we're talking about helping patients to reclaim quality life with persistent pain. So perhaps will you just give us a little intro to this and how you interpret this title?
Well, the title we gave ourselves was From Surviving to Thriving.
Yeah.
And well, the first thing to say is to me, this sort of encapsulates a lot about the population of people that you would see. You know, if someone's not suffering with pain, there would be no point in bothering to seek some help, would there? So it tends to be people who are, treading water and perhaps not doing a brilliant job at that as well, really struggling. So often, and I'm a bit biased here, but typically the people that I'm seeing are the people that, they are just about surviving. They're doing whatever they can to just keep on going. And I hope that gives people a sense. I'm sure if you're clinicians here, you have this already, but it gives you a sense of how hard it is, paining. So that's the first thing that I'm thinking about, and we'll go into that in a little bit of detail. And the idea of thriving is what I'm interested in creating hope. We've talked about hope before, haven't we? But I'm interested in creating hope, and the notion of thriving. I think that sort of fits hope there as well, um, and it gives us somewhere to go, to reach towards as well. So that's in my head. That's where I'm sort of positioning myself. And then
Mm.
there's a whole bunch of different concepts actually that we could bring in here. So the first concept that I think may help is just to understand the human basic need. I mean, it sounds so obvious, doesn't it? But until you really think about it, it might not have struck you as something that's important. But we all have basic needs, don't we? And if those needs are not met, then that really has a huge impact on us. So I did a literature search actually this morning to just say, is there this unified definition? Is there something out there that the World Health Organization or others are using to understand and define what our basic needs are? And as far as I can see, that's not entirely clear. So the ones that I use, I've actually taken from a psychologist called Rick Hansen, who's written beautifully. He's written a couple of books actually that I found to be really helpful. In fact, I've decided to just bring one out just in case. I'm not getting paid for this, but Hardwiring Happiness is a beautifully accessible book actually, and with some lovely ideas in it. And he mentions three basic needs, which are that all humans need connection.
Yeah.
Connection with others. We're social creatures. We need safety,
Mm-hmm.
and we also need satisfaction as well. And what you see in pain is that pain has a phenomenal ability to strip away at those basic needs. How many people we've talked about threat, for instance, haven't we? Relating to pain and in fact, I was having a conversation with a patient yesterday, and he was telling me about the different diagnoses he'd currently received. It was like 3 or 4 different diagnoses, and he was scared. He was scared. He was worried. There, just in those diagnoses, there was a high level of threat, and that safety that we need, if I'm just being true to that, has been stripped away. So that's an area that I think is important, and we can talk about this in lots and lots more detail. But then pain is really interesting in that the effect that pain can have on people is that it dictates what's possible. And going out and meeting others, meeting your friends, having a meal, or whatever, the connection or the things that create satisfaction in you, that can be stripped away as well. So at a sort of basic, at a fundamental level, it is really fascinating on one level. It is fascinating, and it's also really it's just really sad how pain can have such a dramatic effect. And strip that away, it's not surprising that you see people in quite vulnerable states and suffering really greatly as well with pain. So
Okay.
that's my sort of like the basic sort of themes that I thought we could talk about.
Brilliant. So just to summarize what you said there, how this has come across for me is that, so some of our basic human needs for to feel content and happiness in our life, pain impacts each one of those three things. So it impacts your safety, in that pain is a threat. It impacts satisfaction in that it dictates what is possible, so leaving you less satisfied with what you're able to do and achieve and be. And connection, how would you say that pain might impact your ability to create connections with people?
I mean, it's very different for each person, but it changes the different the ways in which we can connect,
Yeah.
and whether we can take what what we typically would have taken from those connections as well. It might be who we can connect with,
Mm,
where we connect with them. All of that might be a shrinking world. So,
yeah.
how much time you can spend with someone, whether you're in the right mental space in order for you to get the nourishment that you ordinarily would have got from being with them as well. So,
Yeah. That's
um,
important, isn't it? Your shrinking world will inevitably shrink your ability to make connection and maintain relationships.
yeah, not with everybody. So again, interestingly, I had a conversation with patient last week, and he was saying it was really interesting how the people he thought were his friends aren't necessarily the people that he's friends with now, and actually there are other people that sort of step
Yeah.
in, and he was in essence he was grieving the fact that he'd lost the people that he thought were his best friends as a result of what
Yeah.
he's going through. It's like they were unable to process and support him through the process of him painting.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. That sort of paints the picture beautifully. So
So shall I can I drop another layer in here
yeah.
as well? Because I feel like there might be something quite interesting, and it relates to a concept called affordances.
Mm,
So affordances, at a really simple level, affordances are action possibilities. It's our ability to be able to act in our world, including social interactions as well as functional movements, whatever, sitting down in a chair, writing with a pen, whatever it might be. And we have sort of these two strands of what affordances are. We might call them the landscape of affordances. All the possible affordances available to humankind isn't
mm,
necessarily all the actions that you can take, because I might not be a master scuba diver, or be able to fly a plane, or so what I can do, we would call our niche, but what I can do, I have my repertoire of things, my action possibilities in my world. Now, what's interesting with pain and how we've talking about, let's take safety as an example. If we see a threat, a high threat value of doing something equating to pain, or maybe of injuring me more or making me worse, or whatever that encompasses that belief, then that will change the field of possibilities for me. In other words, the possibilities that I see available for myself.
mm,
And that's what I was talking about with the notion of shrinking. So the shrinking world is the shrinking possibilities in my world. And some of that is, if you want,
mm.
a self-enforced, maybe necessary as well. But that's where, so for me, that sort of shrinking world. Now, as a clinician, this is super interesting, because I might be able to help open up possibilities alongside that person
Mm.
where they thought there wasn't a possibility there. And that really, we're starting to now just transition from this notion of just surviving to actually starting to say, can we start
Yeah.
nourishing ourselves and
Okay.
bringing things back into our life that gives us a sense of meaning and value and joy and happiness, or whatever it might be, of well-being on different levels, might be a really important starting place.
Okay. So that I think that we should move into that part of, so we're talking about the thriving part now,
Yeah.
and as clinicians, what sort of, we've established sort of baseline that this is what people with pain experience. Now, as a clinician, what's your role in terms of this?
I did. So I'm not sure we've transitioned quite to the thriving. I would say there's a bit more we could talk about with surviving. I mean, we could
Okay.
spend days actually talking about it, couldn't we? As you know, because that there's and if we think about our relationship with someone, the ability to be able to support them, to feel like they can have confidence. You know, if you just look at your role with that other person, we can provide some of those basic needs there. You know, we should be able to step in to that space as well. And that might be simple stuff, mightn't it? In just the way that we communicate or we relate, or how we connect with those other people. So I believe there's a lot there that we can do mindfully, in, if you want, in just giving someone just this touch of space, so they're not just surviving. You know, can you imagine each day how
Yeah.
expensive that is on everybody if they're just surviving? And
So are you saying that part of your process here is the acknowledgement to the person, to the patient, that you understand that these are the things that they're experiencing?
sometimes you might say that. I think where I'm thinking of it is my position relating to them. If I understand the potential ramifications, implications of being in pain, then it gives me a better understanding of what my role is with that person as well. So we've talked about things like therapeutic alliance, haven't we? And the rapport and the relationship and the listening skills and questioning, open questioning, and all of those actually it beautifully dovetail into this role that we have as someone to be able to support them at that time. And you could say, like, at a really simple level, we could just dial down the relative threat volume and give them a little sense of safe. Some of them say that to you as well. You're with them and they say, I feel so much better that I'm being able to see you, speak to you, and you've just put my mind at ease a bit, and they, like, you hear things like that fed back to you. So to me, then that is suggesting you're on the right track. You know, you're doing the right, you've got the right role, you found your role for that person. Then moving on, like thinking about the affordances as well. I mean, however you want to consolidate this, what we've been saying, then there are two phrases I very, very regularly talk about: opportunities and possibilities. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to, alongside that person, create, find, look for, open up more possibilities, more opportunities to, you know, have needs met, if you want, at a basic level. But that's much more individual than that, because there'll be certain things that they really value or need to do or want to do, or, you know, and then that's the artistry in working together and knowing what those might be. So to me, this is exciting, because then it's saying you're only limited by your creativity, your combined creativity, to open up opportunities and possibilities. Because there are that, coming back to the affordances, the landscape, like how many possibilities are out there. Then not all of them can we take, but there are so, like, an infinite number of possibilities. What's being seen as possibilities at the moment might be very, very limited, and it's just eking out, you know, creating little opportunities to be able to get some nourishment, to feel the joy, and we've said these things previously, but not just feel them, but really, you know, be with them.
Can you give me some little examples here, Tim? Because I get it, you know, I do get it, but I think it can be it could be it's quite difficult, because everybody's so different, aren't they? Everybody's completely unique. Everybody's situation is completely unique. And just some examples of where you have maybe spotted, you know, you've seen you've seen the things that people are struggling with, and then you've spotted an opportunity in that for creating some possibility for safety, or for, you know, increased satisfaction or connect. Can you just give some examples?
Yeah. Well, I can say like, so the guy that I was talking about last week and the loss of his friends, and we were just talking about where else he was getting support from other people in his life.
Mm,
Super simple stuff. So he was, and how he might go about that, given that he is almost housebound. And so we were talking about what about phone call, video call, with people that gave him the sense of nourishment. So that might be one that might open up a conversation, and we were just getting a little bit of feedback about that as well. And same guy, he really gets a lot of satisfaction from cooking,
right.
but cooking was super tough because it required standing up for periods of time, and so we were talking about how we can adapt that. So what could we do in order for us to make that a possibility? And it
Mm,
might mean changing your expectations of, the meal that you're going to provide, or what's involved, or the length of time. And so those would be the sorts of conversations that I would be having. And I'm not giving them the idea. We're opening up the possibility. How else
mm,
might you do that? How can we do that? How can we do that in a way that we're most likely to succeed with it?
mm. Are you trying to find things that for people that bring them a lot of pleasure
Yeah,
then?
well, that would be come back to those basic needs then, wouldn't it? So I've mentioned those two things, and in my mind, I've got connection with others, satisfaction. So
Mm,
immediately, those two things are absolutely fundamental in him meeting his needs. I'm not necessarily telling him that, but in my mind, I'm thinking these are so important.
yeah.
Can we find other opportunities there as well, create more possibilities as well?
Mm. And when does that sort of then that would seem to me that could then sort of propel people forwards once you'd managed to do one thing where successfully that perhaps they thought that they had been removed from their ability, but then they managed to do that even in some way. Does that propel you into a different phase of this idea of thriving?
Well, yeah. I propel. I don't know. Yes. It's a dynamic part of the process. Yeah.
Mm,
And I would say it's important as well. But how fast that goes is another matter. So you might open up space and possibilities in one part of their life, like the connection with others, but you might still be really struggling, and that might be because of a number of things going on in your life. Maybe threat still remains. There's a lack of safety still. So you might open up one area, but still be, there might still be some constraints and restrictions elsewhere.
mm,
Um, what and then what visually I'm thinking about different metaphors that we use, but surviving, typically people will have heard of vulnerability.
mm,
And we've used vulnerability as a phrase before, haven't we? So that's what I'm thinking with surviving, is that people are in a vulnerable state, and what they can do will be limited by the state of vulnerability. And what we're moving towards with thriving is resiliency,
mm,
and we're building, we're creating space, and we're giving someone with resiliency, we're opening up freedom. And there's a big difference between those two states, is that when life shrinks, when you're just surviving, there isn't much freedom there. You've got to think about everything that you're going to do, when you're going to do it, how much you do, and then you're going to pay for it afterwards. Like, there is expense on so many different levels, isn't there?
mm,
And there's even expense in that you're having to relearn how to be in your world, act in your world, because you've never had to act like this with pain. So it's like it's like you're a novice again, aren't
mm,
you? So that is energy demanding in itself. So you are constantly draining those stores, and you are teetering on that susceptible, vulnerable state all of the time. What we do is, when we create freedom, is we start just moving through, acting in our life in such an implicit way, we are habitually moving through, we're doing stuff without having to think about it.
mm,
That's liberating as well, isn't it? Because then suddenly you're just going, oh wow, I was able to do it, and I didn't even have to think about it. And again, you hear this from patients. I've got a it's a picture yesterday, but it was from a patient's mum saying, "You won't believe the transformation," and I love that word, transformation. But Jane, who you know of, Jane was telling me the other day. Um, she said, I feel like a new me. I've even been experimenting with some new makeup." And then so her mum's sent me a picture of Jane through. She is literally looking like a different person, and that's to me, this is a part of like your transfer. She's like she's thriving, and there's nothing more amazing than the sort of literal embodiment of that thriving, of that
Mm.
of that transformational process. And we've talked about this. The phrases we would use are writing a new you, or creating a new self narrative. But she's not. She is doing that. We are deliberately working on that. But she's living it. She's feeling it. She is seeing it as well, coming back to
Mm.
her. And that those are all, I think, key elements of what thriving would be. And
Yeah.
how exciting is that as well, to think, after 15 years of pain and disablement, and that you've still got more, like things are still improving, and that to me is super, super exciting.
Mm. No, oh, well, there's loads there. This is, it feels like a really big, really big topic. And there were so many, we could have literally done a whole session on each one of those things that you introduced it with, the connection, the safety, the satisfaction. I feel like we could have done a whole half an hour on each one of those. And I suppose that brings us back into the idea that these sessions are really just about giving you a little taste about the explain pain approach, and how it is just so much more than understanding the mechanisms of pain. It's so much more about the actual talking and the communication and the way in which you do that. And Tim is absolutely, you are just second to none when it comes to that. And we have fantastic feedback about people who come on your courses. I didn't plan to say this, but particularly recently, we've just had some amazing feedback about how when people have worked with Tim, that they have understood this in such a different way, that the communication and the relationship building and these subtleties of what Tim's been talking about here today have such a profound impact on the way they then go back into clinic and work with their patients. But the effects that they're seeing with their patients are dramatic because of their approach. And it's not just this session today where we've talked about this. There's been many of these sessions where we've gone into, like Tim keeps referring, we've talked about that. And it's such an important part of the explain pain approach. It's so much bigger than you might initially think. So thanks, Tim. I just feel like we could have gone on today. But that was absolutely brilliant. Well, once again, and we will kind of run out of time now, so we will have to wrap it up there. But we are doing these sessions every 2 weeks, so please, do go into the clinical discussion group. If you join that group, you'll find out what sessions are coming up. If you go onto the YouTube channel and you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you'll be notified every time we upload a new one of these videos. Like I say, we're doing them every 2 weeks, and there's a whole back catalogue of previous sessions on a whole variety of subjects. And then I think we've got one coming up in 2 weeks' time, and that next one is actually going to be GMI focused. So again, GMI is a treatment approach that unless you've actually done the course, people don't kind of understand how flexible it is. So we haven't chosen the topic for that yet, but we will be discussing that after this. And you'll receive an invitation to that next session. So it'd be great if you could come and join us. If not, check us out on the YouTube channel. Just very quickly at the end, Tim's next course, which is Explain Pain Winter School, starts, I think, in 8 days. We're nearly full, but there are still a few places on that. So if anybody is interested in joining that course, we will send the link out to that course as well. Following this session. So we have a few places available. And there is actually a GMI course coming up as well, isn't there, Tim, in December? But we'll talk about that next time we go live. So thanks, guys. Thanks to everybody, as always, for joining and listening. And I hope you found it useful. And we'll see you again really soon, hopefully. Take care and have a good rest of your day. Bye.